Hello friends, it is me, your old pal JJ, coming to you from fabulous Los Angeles, California. I'm here for the big 10th annual Videographers Conference, or VidCon. But until then, I am just wasting time here at Venice Beach, one of the most beloved and tackiest tourist hotspots in all of America. Cue the montage. Alright, now that all of that is done, we are now at Tomorrow, and actually at VidCon itself. VidCon is a big extravaganza the YouTube Corporation puts on every year for YouTube fans and creators alike. It's been running since 2009, when the famous Green brothers decided the world needed something like this. And as YouTube has risen to become one of the dominant media outlets of our time, so too has VidCon risen to become one of the biggest annual events in Southern California. So the thing you have to remember about YouTube is that the base audience for it these days is basically 11-year-old boys, and as a result, VidCon is basically set up to be like an 11-year-old boy's idea of heaven. So you get things like the Nerf Arena, and the Candy Maze, and the Nike Zone, and of course the Axe Body Spray Fortnite Lounge. But you know, overall, it's not really that much different than any other large convention. In addition to all the fun stuff, there were a bunch of panels and seminars where attendees could learn various things about the business and tech side of being a successful YouTuber, as well as the cultural and social challenges posed by the website. The one thing that has been quite interesting to me, of course, has been some of the sort of political themes of some of the seminars, in the sense of some of the sort of social, cultural, current events that have come up. A common theme was the need for YouTube to be a welcoming, inclusive, and representative space, for instance. So in addition to panels on stuff like sound editing, there were panels about the challenges and opportunities faced by LGBTQ creators, or physically disabled creators, or creators on the neurodiversity spectrum. Mental health was another issue that a number of panels and seminars sought to address. In recent years, it has become increasingly common for YouTube creators to speak openly about their mental health challenges and help normalize these experiences to their audiences. And of course, there was also a lot of talk over how to deal with what the YouTube people call bad actors, which is basically just people who behave badly on YouTube, including harassers, bullies, and stalkers, as well as people who spread hateful or dangerous content. That last point is obviously one of the biggest challenges that YouTube is struggling with at the moment, and it is also one that has come up a lot during my own VidCon adventures. See, during VidCon, I mostly hung out with other educational YouTubers, and when we were chatting together about our personal YouTube challenges, a common one was worries about YouTube's vague policies regarding monetization. For anyone who doesn't know, monetization is YouTube jargon for when a video has ads in it, which is how people who make YouTube videos for a living earn most of their money. Advertisers, however, are nervous about their ads appearing on videos that are full of hateful or obscene or otherwise deranged content, which I think we can all agree is perfectly reasonable. But the problem is that YouTube does much of its screening for this sort of content through some sort of underdeveloped artificial intelligence system that can't really understand the context of anything, and as a result makes a lot of sloppy mistakes. For example, I met a guy named Grant who runs a small channel called The Casual Historian. A while ago, he made a video about the history of Holocaust deniers, which wound up getting demonetized and even deleted. Grant's video itself was not hateful, and indeed served a important anti-hateful educational purpose, but the YouTube machine wasn't able to understand that. It just detected a video about Nazis, and therefore something bad that had to be punished.
Now, as of recording this video, I don't know this for certain, but there's a pretty good chance that this video was demonetized at the very least, and even another very good chance that it may have been age restricted. And of course, because of that, that means the reach of this video within YouTube's algorithm is probably going to be nerfed a bit.
All the history YouTubers have stories like this. I have stories like this. The YouTube AI algorithm is simply not where it needs to be when it comes to people who make videos about controversial topics. Many LGBT YouTubers struggle with this issue as well.
And it is filtering out a hell of a lot of LGBT content. I've had around 40 videos taken off in restricted mode, so you can't see them if you're in restricted mode. Callum has had every single video on his channel bar one taken off.
The AI algorithm often has a hard time distinguishing videos featuring healthy discussions of sex and sexuality from well, porn. But you know, amid all of this taking place, thousands of miles from here, a summit of a very different sort is happening.
U.S. President Donald Trump is holding a social media summit today.
This afternoon, the White House hosted a social media summit.
President Trump playing host at the White House today at a summit on social media.
Yes, indeed. On Thursday, July 11th, around the same time, VidCon was hosting a Q&A session with ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis. President Trump was giving opening remarks at a White House gathering of conservative social media superstars. Though this particular meeting wasn't just about YouTubers, many of the most famous people there came from popular conservative YouTube channels, including Mark Dice, Tim Pool, Brandon Tatum, Diamond and Silk, and some of the PragerU people. Trump's social media summit was basically a sort of parallel dimension VidCon. I mean, it's not completely fair to compare them because VidCon is this huge multi-day extravaganza, and Trump's thing was just a couple of hours of speeches. But the Trump summit very much considered itself in opposition to the sort of mainstream big tech event VidCon represents. So the themes that defined the White House gathering were ones that were completely absent at VidCon and vice versa. As President Trump and the others spoke to this carefully curated crowd of creators, they articulated a set of values that they believe to be animating the whole social media / YouTube scene right now. The main one was a belief that the big tech companies, like YouTube, are actively biased against conservatives and are actively censoring their ability to spread their message and agitate on behalf of the president.
We had a terrible bias. We have censorship like nobody has any understanding or nobody can believe.
These companies are trying to stop the ordinary men and women who you represent from hearing their voices. I'm very concerned that they affected the outcome of the 2018 election, and if we let them do what they've been doing, it's going to affect the outcome of the 2020 election as well.
They have to quit discriminating against conservatives. You agree with that? No more. No more discrimination.
Many of the conservative creators who were in attendance have a history of publicly alleging that YouTube uses demonetization and other powers to punish them for expressing their political opinions. PragerU, for instance, even sued YouTube last year after some of their videos were demonetized, alleging that it was entirely ideologically driven. Or take this claim from Leela Rose, who runs the anti-abortion channel Live Action.
Our videos have been viewed more highly than almost any other abortion-related content on YouTube, but YouTube, we made it to the first page of search results, but YouTube buried our pro-life videos and boosted pro-abortion videos. So this double standard and bias is a growing problem in big tech.
Discussion question. Can you think of a reason why these claims might not be particularly persuasive based on what I said earlier? In any case, the conservatives were pretty clear about what they wanted. A stronger commitment to fairness and free speech from YouTube and the rest.
And they're not using what we gave them fairly. And they have to do that. And we don't want to stifle anything. We certainly don't want to stifle free speech, but that's no longer free speech.
Now, something that a lot of people noticed about Trump's social media summit was that he didn't invite any of the right-wing personalities who have faced some of the harshest punishments from the big tech companies, like, say, Alex Jones, who had his whole YouTube channel deleted. They didn't even invite Steven Crowder, despite the fact that he is the conservative commentator who has been in the most trouble with YouTube recently. In fact, a couple of times during his speech, the president even seemed a little bit uncomfortable with some of the characters who had been invited to the White House.
We saw you folks being taken off, and we fought on all of you, and many of you are back now. But many of the names, I won't mention your names, but some of you were taken off for absolutely no reason. I mean, in all fairness, some of you I could almost understand. I mean, some of you guys are out there. But even you should have a voice. But some of you deserve. Some of you. I mean, it's genius, but it's bad.
This was interesting because it suggested that Trump's people, and indeed Trump himself, did sort of understand on some level that what they were characterizing as conservative censorship was actually a little bit more complicated than that. The VidCon people certainly didn't see folks like Steven Crowder as conservatives being censored. They saw them as bad actors being rightfully punished for saying hateful or false things, or spreading bullying and harassment across a site that many users expect to be a safe and friendly place. And why wouldn't they expect that? I mean, as we saw, VidCon presents an image of YouTube as a company that is fun and happy and decidedly child-friendly. It is a place for entertainment and empowerment, including the empowerment of marginalized communities. The conservatives, however, primarily understand companies like YouTube as tools for free speech. They say the big tech companies like YouTube have to give everyone the opportunity to make any kind of content they want, and indeed even make money from doing so. Now, of course, to some degree this is the demand of everyone who makes YouTube videos, but in the PragerU lawsuit, the courts also ruled that it was an unreasonable demand, given that YouTube is a private corporation and is thus under no obligation to do anything for anyone unless it wants to. In contrast to the peppiness of VidCon, the Trump summit was very hostile and aggrieved and confrontational. The notion that companies like YouTube actively hate conservatives is clearly becoming a big piece of conventional wisdom on the Republican side. Putting aside the question as to whether or not there is any hard proof that YouTube demonetizes conservative videos just for being conservative, which I don't think there is this charge of anti-conservative bias true in a broader sense? I found myself thinking about this a lot. As you guys know, I like to think of myself as a broadly conservative person. So when a lot of conservatives are alleging something, I do tend to take it somewhat seriously. You could definitely say that there is a strong progressive vibe to VidCon, just in the sense that there is nothing there that is explicitly conservative. To the extent the right wing is mentioned at all, it is likely to be in the context of the bad actors. On the other hand, it is also sort of disturbing to think that VidCon's values of inclusivity, as it relates to the LGBT community, or disabled people, or people struggling with mental health challenges, are somehow left-wing values. But unfortunately, I think there are a lot of conservatives these days who would consider that kind of stuff to be that way, which has a lot to do with the fact that our divisions between right and left increasingly have very little to do with public policy and a lot to do with basic human dispositions. With society split into one group of people who are like tough and defensive and kind of insensitive, and another group of people who are more emotional and open and expressive. This is a very big topic I cannot fully get into right now, but I certainly think it is very apparent when you look at these two conventions side by side. Near the end of VidCon, John Green, one of VidCon's co-founders, sat down for a public Q&A with a journalist from The Atlantic. When it was time for audience questions, I asked John Green what he thought about the Trump social media summit and the increasing polarization of political communities online in general. They haven't posted the full video of this event online yet, so I will try to summarize John's response as fairly as I can. John said he hadn't heard of the summit, but he reacted in this kind of exasperated way, like, oh God, what's Trump doing now? The interviewer brought up some of the vain and self-important things that Trump had said, and they had a bit of back and forth about that. And then John Green spoke a bit about the degree that social media is helping to amplify the power of bad actors. He didn't get into many specifics, but I think it was pretty clear that he had the right-wing cranks in mind. John said he didn't have much faith in a robotic algorithm to weed out bad content, but then, in what was clearly a pretty dejected moment of concession, he also said that he didn't really have any better solutions either. Though he did say that he thought that America's big tech companies were quite poorly regulated right now, which, interestingly enough, was also something that President Trump said.
Today I'm directing my administration to explore all regulatory and legislative solutions to protect free speech and the free speech rights of all Americans.
But I think that John's best point came when he said that there is always an inescapable tension between being inclusive and having values. Perhaps that is not the most profound point in the world, but it is very clearly one of the defining challenges of our time, both online and off. I have to do multiple takes of everything because I cannot film myself standing in any place for more than a few minutes without people, jumping and waving in the background.